Welcome to Inspiring Perspectives, a podcast by thinkPARALLAX featuring fresh takes and bold ideas for the real-world sustainability challenges and solutions at some of the world's most respected brands and companies. I'm your host, Derek Sabori, and this is what sustainability sounds like today. All right, well, hey everyone, welcome back to Inspiring Perspectives. This is the show where I chat with sustainability experts with the aim of delivering valuable takeaways and some actionable advice on a wide range of topics that are being talked about in corporate sustainability. And one of those topics that always seems to rise to the surface is, how do I get a job in sustainability, or specifically climate? Well, our guest today, Cristina Lobo Guerrero, did just that. So Cristina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Derek. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be great because we met at Climate Week. I went to a couple of events at the EY building there, and you are a climate change and sustainability consultant at EY, and EY is one of, as they call them, the Big Four, the four largest professional services networks in the world. You've been there for a couple of years now. How's it been for you?
It's been really good, Derek. I think I'm one of I wouldn't say the very few, but I'm one of the small group of people that loves their job. I wouldn't change it for the world, at least not now. It's a roller coaster of emotions. Definitely consulting is a lot of work. It's a lot of long hours, but I have been very lucky to have amazing clients. My coworkers are just amazing people that come from all different parts of the world, of different practices, of different careers, and just having that diversity and experiences is great to have in a single workplace.
Well, it was really, it was almost kind of like awe-inspiring when I went there to the building for those Climate Week sessions that you all had there. I mean, just walking into the building, it's big, it's almost intimidating, and it's really impressive. And I'm sure for you, I want to talk about it, just sort of how you got your job there and what it's been like. But I mean, are there those moments when you just sort of walk in and remember that, wow, I'm here at EY, and does it feel like a lifelong dream, or do you ever have to pinch yourself, or at this point is it just like, it's just work?
No, I don't think it'll ever just be work. I think I have to pinch myself every single day. I remember probably a year ago, I was talking with one of the partners who is a great mentor to me. And I was like, how are we doing this? Like, who am I to tell a client what I know? And she was like, we all experience it. I've been at EY for 45 years. Like, imposter syndrome is still a thing. You have to pinch in yourself and truly just be in awe of where you are and kind of just keep going day by day. But it is still very shocking, not only the buildings, but the amount of people, the amount of technology, like the different things that such a company has to offer really never stops amazing me.
Yeah. How exciting. Well, tell us a little bit about what kind of things you're typically working on in this role. Give us a little bit of, behind the scenes. What does a day in the life look like for you?
Yeah, I think every consultant will say this, right? Everyone's job is completely different depending on your clients, on your work hours, et cetera, et cetera. But I think starting for me, I am not a net zero, inbox zero person. So first thing in the morning, I jump in, I make sure all of my emails are read, reply to everything that I can. And most of these emails are just like responding to clients if they have last minute questions on something we've delivered, or internal things that are going on, whether we have a campaign or we're trying to write a proposal for clients, like answering as many of those emails as I can in the morning. And then you usually have 1 to 3 clients, and I just start digging into my client work. That means realistically, mostly Excel and PowerPoint. For those who don't know what consulting is, it's a lot of those, but it's a lot of the research and the really finding those insights to develop these Excels and these PowerPoints. So yeah, that's kind of my day. It goes usually from 9 to 5. There's weeks where it goes 9 to 9, 9 to 1. It varies, but I would say it really is up to you to kind of decipher what works for you and what your working schedule looks like.
Yeah, because that's one of the things, obviously, with consulting. I mean, you hear about that, just it can be grueling hours. It's tough work, and it's kind of like you said, it's up to you to get your job done, but sometimes within those hours, but often I'm sure it bleeds over into the nights and the weekends easily.
Yeah, and I don't think that's anyone's ideal, and by no means has anyone ever told me, like, you have to stay up until 2 a.m. to get it done, but it's more like my personality. I would rather get it done at 2 a.m. and then sleep in a little bit. I work better at night. But it's definitely not in a pressure situation where you're expected to work until 2 a.m. It's just Sometimes it happens and you don't notice the time. Obviously, there's a lot of compensation for it and meals and things that I'm more than happy to talk about, but more onto the sustainability things of the job.
Well, one thing that I think is really interesting, and it's funny that you confused your zero inbox with net zero, because that's the kind of thing that you're working on, I'm sure, day in and day out. Are most of the projects that you're working on, I mean, it's sustainability related, general sustainability, climate related, or is it a little bit of everything, and it could be anything across the board?
That's a great question. So at EY, we have 5 different groups, and each, let's call it subgroup, specifies on something, right? So there's the climate advisory, there's the sustainability advisory, there's environmental health and safety, there's digital, and I'm blanking on the other one. I should know this, but there's another pillar basically where each individual like myself will usually be tagged to one of those. And so most of your projects are going to be either climate, either non-financial reporting, either sustainability. So I sit under the sustainability subsector. Most of my work is in that area, but I do, because they're so interconnected and because one client can want to do all of it, we kind of juggle many hats at once.
Yeah, and you can hear a little bit of the New York City background. You're there in New York City. Are you working mostly in the office? Are you working from home and remotely, or do you get to go into the office every day?
Yeah, that's the great part about consulting, or at least at EY. We have a huge amount of flexibility. I think the idea is for people to go into the office 2 or 3 times a week. But if you want to work from home, if you're maybe further away from an office, that's kind of wherever works best for you, works best for everyone. We do work a lot cross country, so I have some teammates in my specific client teams that are in San Francisco, in Houston, in Atlanta, in Boston. So being in the office doesn't always mean being with my teammates, and sometimes it's easier. I personally find it more efficient to work from home, and on a very personal basis, I cannot leave my dog alone. So I love just working from home. I try and go into the office at least once a week. Sometimes I make it 2, but yeah, it's kind of up to you what works for you.
And if I remember correctly, you've been there for a few years now, almost 3 years. I'm sure before you got there, you had some good options because you've got a really impressive resume. We'll talk about how you landed the role there at EY, but first I want to rewind a little bit because you've got a great story, and that's how we connected. You know, you were so friendly, just greeting everybody there, but I really connected with you. I wanted to know kind of a little bit of your backstory, and I know it starts in Colombia. So is this the work that you always wanted to do? Did you always see yourself as a consultant at one of the big 4?
Yeah, I think that's, as a, 16, 18-year-old kid, when you hear these big words, that's everyone's dream, and I think that was part of my dream. I actually want to take that back. I don't think it's everyone's dream, and that's okay if it's not, but a lot of people think it's their dream job, and I think it has definitely met my expectations. It was my dream to be in an area where I could mix both my biggest passion, that, as you mentioned, rooted in Colombia. I grew up in one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, and just being exposed to nature all day long, into marine life and to mountains and volcanoes, it was just part of who I was. I just really wanted to make my career in that in a way that was in the private sector, and was something that I could kind of dip my feet in a lot of different areas, because at 18 you really don't know what you're doing. So
that's right.
What is my passion? What can I make like a career in? Where is there enough money to give me the lifestyle that I want to? And that kind of became EY. As of right now, I think there are so many other possibilities for people in the same space. But as you mentioned, like it all started in Colombia. I'm very lucky that my parents were very much nature enthusiasts, and they really exposed us to scuba diving when we were young, and like walking barefoot to really connect with nature. Identifying trees, like my mom can name every single tree out there and every single orchid. Wow. So I don't know, it just became from a passion to how can I make, in short words, money out of it.
Yes. And I know, kind of looking at your educational pathway, your career pathway, your degree work was at the intersection of business, education, and science. And I know from our conversations that's been an interesting crossroads, and it served you well. Tell me a little bit about that and why that's been an important part of your career pathway.
Yeah, I think I was struggling to decide on a major, and again, to my previous point, I really wanted to make sure I was able to dip my feet in a lot of different things, and that's where I found kind of this all-encompassing major, which is like, how do you communicate the things that you know with the science, which is this nature-based passion, but most importantly, we do live in a society that runs on businesses and like capitalism and money, and as much as I wouldn't want it to be that way, you need to understand how to talk to these people and how to talk to them in a way where they're not always losing money, or where it's just another thing on their check mark, where it really connects the dots between the science behind climate change is real, how is that going to impact my company, and what can I do to profit from this rather than have negative impact. So I just chose a bunch of different things, kind of build my own major, had different internships in all within sustainability, but in different industries and sectors so I could fully understand it, and tried to learn to the best of my ability how to communicate that to people on every level of the spectrum, whether you're as passionate as me or maybe know more than I do, or if you're just getting started or completely disagree with me and you just want to have a conversation. Like, I think I just wanted to go for that approach of openness and having different possibilities for myself and for the world, I guess.
And when you look back at sort of that, especially your college degrees, your college experience, tell me about, connect that to landing the role at EY. What do you attribute getting the role to? Was it through networking, the experiences that you had, those internships that you mentioned, your previous work, or your degree here, your unique degree setup that you have? Was it a mix of all of it? What was it that helped you land that role? And maybe tell us a little bit about landing that role there. What was that like as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say it was definitely not easy. I think everyone knows it is a very competitive environment in general, but in consulting and in the Big Four, it is very competitive. I want to attribute it to everything. I think my education did a great job in my undergrad, in my master's, in my personal time. It gave me the right tools to know what I was talking about, at least at a very primary level, and really get me excited about things I wanted to do. And then I think this is where networking, especially in the States, it comes into play. I've seen it play differently in different countries, but in the States, networking is such a big deal that I thought you have to be able to leverage it to be able to get or open doors to new opportunities, rather. And then experience, I guess I got the experience because of the other two, but all in all, I would say persistence is what really landed me the job. I applied to EY, I believe my sophomore year of undergrad, so like 6-7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, the CCAS, the Climate Change and Sustainability Services team, was very small. They were not hiring. They were only hiring at the very senior level. And I think just year after year applying and being the little, very intense girl that messaged the same person on LinkedIn, like, hey, I'm still interested. Like, is there any openings? And time after time I heard, no, sorry, keep on reaching out. And I feel like creating that network just gave me, one, the experience again to know how to talk to these people, but also just expanding the network of, okay, at least I know who works there. I can ask them, is the position open? Will it open? I think that specific network within CCAS allowed me to know the timelines, what to say in an interview, like all of these small tricks that we think we know, but inside culture really helps. I think my persistence, and then almost 3 years ago, I applied, even more because I got my offer way before I actually joined. But 4 years ago, I applied, got it, and here we are.
That's amazing that it was 6 years prior and that you were that persistent and kept following up. Was the team there, obviously it sounds like they were good at engaging with you and kind of giving each time, I would imagine, maybe a little bit more information, a little bit more friendly, a little bit more like, oh yeah, hey, good to hear from you again. Is that how it went? Or was it always a different person, or you always hit the same person up every single time?
Yes, definitely to the friendly people. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but people at EY and CCAS broadly are just amazing. I think I reached out to the same person multiple times, and then they introduced me to a few other folks, and I think that's what really expanded, because I could ask them different questions. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're divided in a couple different subsectors. I spoke to someone in digital, I spoke to someone in sustainability. So when it came to interview time, I could say all of these things and say like, oh, I've really, really done my research. I know what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really great tip, and I think that persistence, though, is something that's really important. Your master's degree is from Colombia, and I want to talk about education a little bit because you've done a lot of it. I'm also a big fan of degrees and advanced degrees, but I think there's no denying that there's a population of young people who might be second guessing for 6 or more years of intense college education. What are your thoughts on that? What are you seeing? What are you hearing from peers and other young professionals? I don't know. What do you think? What are you hearing?
I think there's two different questions. One thing is what am I hearing, and the other are what are my thoughts. If I wanted to start with my thoughts, Derek, I'd say it's a privilege to be educated, and I would encourage absolutely everyone to get it. I think price is definitely an issue. I think there are a lot of ways to get scholarships or to go into schools that maybe don't have that pricey tag, but any sort of education you can get is a privilege, and if you have the opportunity, I highly encourage you to take it. Like, the more information we receive about any topic you're interested about, I think personally, the better the world will be, and the better informed decisions you will personally make. So I am very pro-education. I do realize it is a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, but I do think it's really worth it, not only on the professional side, but how you personally grow those 4 years of undergrad and even beyond. Like, if you do a master's or a PhD, the people you meet, the fun you have, the experience of living outside of your parents' house, most of the people do that. I think that's you can't take it back from anyone. So I really, really encourage it. I do want to flag, or I do believe education is not well compensated. I've experienced this, I think, across the board. I'm not finger pointing a single company. It's just everyone says you need to have a degree from one of these top 10 universities, or you need to have a master's, otherwise you won't get hired. But then your paycheck reflects the same as one of someone who probably does have the same education or less. And I think that's very frustrating. And I'm kind of in this limbo where it's like, if it's not getting compensated, then why are we doing it? And it's honestly a systems issue that I wish I had a quick fix for. But as far as my thoughts, I do think, again, to my point, the more educated you are, the more you listen to conversations like this, you can probably negotiate your price or your salary, because you have higher education, or because you have normal education, or even if it's, I forget the name, but I think it's an AD, something that you do like 2 years.
Like an AA, like an associate's degree. AA,
there you go.
Yep.
I just think education is a privilege, and I would encourage everyone to take it, despite these small caveats that are really important for some people. But the more information, the more education you get, I think the better off you'll be individually and as a society.
Yeah, that's interesting what you just pointed out. The fact, you might have graduated from a top tier university because, you hear that, you're encouraged to do it, you go out and do it. But no matter kind of where you come in at in an organization, you're all kind of coming in at the same level, and then you're paid for the position, not necessarily, hey, you're coming in at this position, but you've got this degree from this university. It doesn't always work that way, and that can be frustrating. I can see that.
It's very frustrating, and I feel it firsthand, right? Like, I think it's a different conversation that I'm more than happy to have, but I understand where companies are coming from in a lens of equity, where you're doing the same job. You were hired to do the same job as anyone else, whether they graduate from Columbia, Stanford, or community college or anything. Like, your everyday job will be the same, and that's where you're getting paid for. So there's this big frustration and kind of limbo again of why then would I get more education. But I think the more education you get, the better network, the more curious you become, and your whole network, not only of people but of ideas, kind of just explodes. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to here.
I want to take a minute before we go on to my next set of questions, just sort of capture, because I know you told me the story of when you got the call that you got the job and how excited you were. And that was really a special moment. And I know for young people kind of getting their first job, I mean, I'll forever remember that call that I got for the job that I wanted, right? It's a really special thing. But knowing that it took you 6 years to get it, tell us a little bit about that moment of you finally getting that call or that email, or however it came, to say you've got the job. What was that like?
It was so exciting, Derek, and thank you for bringing it up. I think you have been working so hard, whether it's at EY or any other company. I feel like anyone who's currently applying feels that same frustration of, I have an Excel with 100 and I've only heard back from 2, and like I've written 200 cover letters and I've updated my resume. Like I've heard that from people in the who are currently in school, and it's very frustrating. And my experience was the same. This was before COVID, post-COVID, post-markets crashing. I think it's just really hard to get a job nowadays. And so after pushing so much for it, I just remember picking up the phone, hearing my interviewer just say, "Hey, Christina, this is X, Y, and Z. You got the job." And I was so excited. I started saying bad words, and I was like, no, seriously, don't fuck with me. And they were like, no, yes, of course you got it. We'd love to send you like the official paperwork, but we just wanted to congratulate you like in a more personal way than on an email. Let us know if you have any questions. And I remember just tears running down my cheeks, calling my bigger sister, just like, hey, I just got the job we've been talking about for so long. And it was so exciting. It felt so like relieving, and being like, all of this was truly worth it. And I think maybe I'm jumping ahead and we want to talk about this, but like, how is that expectation of like, wow, it's my dream job versus like how I actually feel it now?
Let's go there.
I think I still am excited every day, and I still remember that exact call that you just brought up, and it's like I can still feel like the jitters and the excitement, and it's all worth it. I would not take that. But with that being said, I think perception versus reality is a 9-to-5 job, as I mentioned earlier, maybe a longer hours job. You are looking at a screen for a long amount of time, and sometimes it feels like your impact is not as much as you want it to be, because it's very easy to talk about, oh, I'm doing all of these things, but then you deliver it to the client and you never know where it goes. I mean, we obviously follow up, but we're not in the client's position. We're not in their company, so we can't see the tangible side of things. And that's, at least, I wouldn't call it disappointing, but my biggest frustration with the job. It's reality is awesome, but then the perception of working every single day in a computer and then not seeing the end product, the tangible side of it, was a little bit frustrating. But I know I jumped the gun. Please,
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I actually want to stop on that for a second, because, coming in as a young person, especially coming in out of school, you had some previous experiences, but did you kind of come in really wanting to be a change maker and really sort of with that ideal sense of like, I'm going into climate work, I'm going to change the world? Or did you come at it from, no, I know what I'm getting into? Like, what was that like for you? Obviously, your voiced a little bit of frustration, but was it how much of a letdown has it been for you in that mode?
Yeah, I definitely went in as a change maker, and I think that was one of the hardest realizations is, unfortunately, we're not there yet. We're not making the changes we want to see, and if anyone's listening, I really encourage you to be the change you want to see in the world. Like, small actions do make a very big impact. It was a little bit disappointing, I think, because, again, to my point, you were saying all these fancy words, and if I tell you exactly what I'm doing for my client, it sounds as if I were working for NASA, right? I'm looking at biopolymers to expand plastics, or beyond plastics to transform an entire supply chain. That sounds very fancy, but the reality is I'm looking at a computer and I'm delivering a PowerPoint. So it's a little bit of both, but you have to take the upper hand and say, okay, at least I'm pushing this company in the right direction. At least I'm doing research that's really interesting to me, and maybe slowly this starts changing the world.
Why do you think things are moving slower than you, for example, or other change makers would like them to?
Yeah, that's a great and really tough question. I don't want to get too political, but I think politics does have a really big play on this in the States and all across the world. And I think that's one of my biggest frustrations. I would wish this was not political. I think it's science and fact-based, and there should be more education and more comprehension of what it really entails for everyone across the world, despite race, gender, economic status. I think that's a really big issue, and I think a lot of the solutions we currently have, as amazing as they are very hard to scale, mostly because of cost and because of interest. Companies want to transform, but then you put $2-3 billion in addition to what they currently spend on I don't know, a plastic bottle, it's going to be a hard sell, right?
Yeah.
Even if the customers are pushing for it, and like you see younger generations, everyone's pushing for it. Everyone protests. Everyone really takes it to heart. But those voices are not getting to the senior leadership level at companies or governments that are managing the money mostly. At least that's my perception.
Yeah, no, I think that's really insightful. I want to go back. You mentioned perception versus reality, and that was, I think that's really interesting. What are there though perks that you would hope for that are in fact are a reality? You imagine. I know when I went to the climate sessions there, beautiful view. Everybody's dressed fancy. It was an opportunity for me. I don't dress fancy. I don't get to wear my my nice clothes, my blazer very often. And you've got great snacks, great catering. What are the other perks there for you in a job like that?
I can only speak for EY, but I've heard other companies also have amazing perks. I think my favorite one at EY is, I mentioned the flexibility of working. We have a hybrid work policy. So basically, I mentioned like wherever you feel the most comfortable. We are very much encouraged to meet at least once a month with our teams, and we have all hands. But I think what I've taken flexibility as a perk is anywhere within the United States, you're allowed to work. And so I spent a month working in Alaska, and that allowed me to work from 4 a.m. till give or take 3 p.m. and then had the rest of the day to explore beautiful Alaska.
Wow.
I've had friends' weddings from college, and I had to take like the day before off, but instead of taking it off, I was able to take a red-eye flight and just work from that location that day. So just having that flexibility, and even within my own location, right, within New York, I can work from 9 to 1, and then I have a doctor's appointment, and then I can just log back in later. It's just the flexibility of being wherever you want to be, as long as you get the job done, is the biggest perk for me.
Yeah.
I think health-wise, there's a bunch of resources available. I think most companies offer like your basic health insurance, but EY does a lot of fertility treatment, or not, EY does not do the fertility treatment, but they help you pay for a lot of fertility treatments. There are 24 or 26 paid counselor sessions or psychology sessions. I think you get like all of this normal corporate like food, transportation paid. They pay for your like home setup, desktop, making sure you can work from anywhere. Great pay.
Yeah,
I think that kind of covers it for me. But yeah, do you have any perks that you have had in the past that you don't currently have, or anything that you've seen in other companies that you think is a big highlight?
Yeah, you know what? One of the perks at thinkPARALLAX that I just took advantage of, we call it Parallaxploration. And I've never seen this at an organization where they give you days off. We had 3 days off. You get a stipend to spend, and it's on sort of an exploration. They encourage you to go travel somewhere that you haven't been by yourself and just do some exploration. And there's always a theme, and this year's theme was explore your roots, or the roots of the place that you go to. So to me, that was like, wow, that's great. And you almost have to force yourself to take that and carve it out. And all of us are kind of scrambling before the end of the year to do it. But it's baked into the culture, which means it's encouraged. And it's not just something that's there, for the sake of being there. It's like, no. We are all doing it. We're coming back and reporting and sharing on it. So yeah, that's another cool thing, that if you can find the right company with the right values, there are some really interesting and cool perks out there to take advantage of.
That's amazing. I'm definitely taking note and proposing it to someone.
Bring it back to EY.
It does make me think... Oh, go for it. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I forgot one very important perk that I love. I'm sure people have picked up on me loving to travel and like being exposed to nature, but EY has a mobility program. So because we have offices in every country, you're allowed to take anything from, I believe it's 3 months up to 2 years in a different country. Obviously, there's a very extensive application process. You have to make the business case. Like, both countries have to agree on your salary, but it's a perk to have the possibility just to, I want to move to France, or I want to move to South Africa, to either explore, learn the language, learn more about what that team is doing, and then come back to your home role. And this is all within like the bigger, broader EY family. I think is
Have you taken advantage of that yet?
I did apply. I did not get it recently. I was supposed to move to South Africa in February of this upcoming year, but I'll keep on applying. You can apply endlessly, so at some point they'll have to say yes.
But if they know you're just going to keep coming back 6 years later, and you're going to keep coming back until you get it. And I know, Christina, kind of from looking at your LinkedIn profile, you speak 3 different languages at least. So you're ready to go to any number of countries, right?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm fluent in French, English, and Spanish, and I can get along in Italian and Portuguese. I think Portuguese is my biggest weakness. But yeah, I'm ready to explore the world, see what that country or continent or whatever has to offer, what that culture brings to me, and how I can bring that to other people. And I think the more open you are to exploring, the more open you are to understanding the world and seeing what issues are there, how can I help, and beyond that, just for pure fun.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love going to new places, traveling to new places, and that is one thing we tell our kids, as soon as you get into college, go do a semester abroad, just get out there as quickly as possible and travel on your own. It's one of the most important things I think you can do. Kind of speaking of, more advice for young people or people looking for jobs like this, you had mentioned to me that, the more people we have in this field, the better. And maybe I'm asking the obvious question, but tell me why that's important to you, and what kind of roles are out there? What is this space looking for right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will repeat it 100 times. The more people interested in climate and sustainability, the better the world would be. I think there is, or there at least should be, an open climate or sustainability position in every single company, whatever the company's values are, because I think sustainability/climate is a core pillar of the working business nowadays. I think, ideally there would be those roles. Realistically, I know not every single company has those, but there are a lot of sustainability analyst roles, or from sustainability analyst all the way up the hierarchy. But I think there's also just companies focused on sustainability, broadly speaking, like a startup that's working on bioplastics, for example, and it'll have all your different roles, right? Operations, engineering, marketing, but that's still within sustainability because of what the company is doing, right? So I think it can be any role. As long as you're passionate, you can bring those little seeds and try to grow that team or grow the company that's working for sustainability generally.
Yeah, you pointing that out, I think you can be a service provider where you can be giving advice on sustainability. You can be somebody in an organization and they may or may not be fully committed, but you are having a voice and you are the small sustainability team trying to change the whole organization. Or you're just one of any people doing any of the roles in a company that is doing the actual work, somewhere in circularity, somewhere in, bioplastics, whatever it might be. So you can come at it, young people can come at it from a whole bunch of different angles. Where if you had to steer somebody and they were saying, well, what major should I get? What should I graduate with? Where would you steer them? Something more in the sciences, something more in business, something more, where do you put them? Where do you think their best chance of landing a climate job is? Because it takes a little bit of everybody, like you said.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to go with science. I think that's where it started from, and that's one of those skills that are maybe harder to learn in life. Because books do say it, but the more you talk about it at a younger age, the more knowledgeable you'll be, and that's so redundant. But I just feel like science, you'll understand the very technical concepts, and then everything else you can kind of learn along the way. I do want to kind of make a caveat there that, to my previous point, any major you want to study, there's a sustainability field in it, right? So one of my really good friends is an art major, and she is now designing or painting drawings, trying to talk through the story of how indigenous communities experience nature and how that has impacted life. And she has this whole gallery on how all of those things connect, right? I have a friend that studied business and now is the chief financial officer at a startup that does carbon markets. There's everything that you want to do. There's architecture, you can be building greener buildings, or making cities more sustainable. There's women's studies and how sustainability impacts women, and how the environment has a bigger impact on women in certain countries. Like anything you want to study, politics, econ, everything relates back to sustainability, as long as you want to take those courses that kind of tie it together, or just in your individual time read about it. So yes, I kind of answered and unanswered your question. I think science is my way to go, but everything is related to the science and to the sustainability of it.
And I'm glad you brought the art part up because I know, I mean, you there at EY, I mean, you have an art-based science, you know, a kind of a collision of art, experience, science, media, multimedia. You have an experience that you can go through to, you know, to help understand what's going on with climate change, all the different scenarios of if we act, if we kind of act, or if we really don't. I mean, that's a perfect example of there's a little bit of something for everybody. Any thoughts on that? And I can't remember the name of it right now. What is that experience called?
So you're referring to Four Futures. That's is right. An AI-based or AI-created, I don't even know what to call it. AI-created
like an experience, right?
And actually, we're encouraged not to spill the beans because we want people to experience it. But in short, it is an AI-developed experience that walks you through 4 different paths of climate realities and where in the world we would end up by 2055. So if you want to, please reach out to your nearest EY office. We are trying to have these. We currently have it in London and in New York, and we're trying to expand to different locations. But yes, to your points, there's this big mix. You want to be Gareth Jenkins. He's our creative director for sustainability, right? He does all of these really cool, artsy, visual experiences to tell our story, and it's all really interconnected.
Well, you get a thumbs up and a strong recommendation from me, so hopefully people can check it out. Let's start to wrap up here, Christina, with some words of advice. I want to kind of get your sense of, you know, we've talked a lot about what it took you to get this role. We've talked about the jobs that are out there. It's been, 6 plus 7, 9 years now since you were applying, but when you first started applying, I should say. But what do you think it takes today then? What are you seeing for peers? I guess if we had to sort of wrap it up and say, what do you see for people getting the job now? It's probably a good degree. Maybe they've had a strong internship. Maybe they've worked somewhere else. They're in the. Can we try to wrap it up for them and get a sense of what do you think it takes today to get a job like this?
Yeah, I think internships are one of the best ways to go, and I don't mean a Big 4 internship. That's amazing if that's the way you want to go, but any work experience you can have, whether that's at a research lab with your professor as a TA. Volunteering is an experience. Anything you can get your hands on to really make sure that you are a hard worker and that you're going in the right path. I think that is bottom line what we're hearing all around. I've personally interviewed people joining EY, and what I focus mostly is on that. What can you bring to the table from your previous experiences? I do think, again, education is a really big plus. I do know a lot of companies. I can't specifically talk to EY because I don't know this is true, but generally speaking, a lot of companies have education, how do you say this? Not clauses, but like a minimum required education. So even if you, in your resume, if you don't have that level of education, like it'll automatically decline you. So again, to my first point, really encourage people to be educated, have that privilege, take that opportunity. And then LinkedIn, especially in the States, is a great resource. I personally get maybe 6 to 10 requests every day to just grab a coffee, a virtual coffee. I'm interested in EY, I'm interested in consulting, I'm interested in environment, let's chat, or I'm starting a startup and want your opinion. Like, I get a lot of those. If you are reaching out on LinkedIn, I encourage you to do that little message that's like, I think you have 100 characters to say, hi, my name is Christina, I want to know more about this. And that, at least for me personally, makes it easier to kind of filter out which persons I'm talking to or which not. I try to accept as much as I can, but realistically, there's just not enough time.
Yeah, it's tough.
So that's kind of my ladder of how I would prioritize it.
Oh, that's great. That's really helpful. Is there anything based on you're in this space, you're deep in this space, you're working with probably some great clients, you've got great peers that you're working with and colleagues. Is there any particular thing that you're really excited about right now in terms of a movement, a technology, something on the horizon, some action that somebody is doing, or somebody that's doing something great? What are you excited about right now?
That's a really tough question I did not prep for. I think I'm just excited to see where the future comes. I think there's not a specific movement, but just I see the younger generations really pushing for this. This is a very generic example, but Greta just pushing all of these communities all across the world to transmit the same message. I'm excited really to see, I work a lot in the consumer and retail space, and I'm really excited to see how that really transforms, mostly from plastics to other materials that are more sustainable, both on the composition of the material and on how it's disposed or like its end of life. And I think there's so many technologies from starch, mycelium, seaweed, all of these really cool startups that are just starting to develop these projects.
Yeah, it's an exciting space and an exciting time. Let's wrap it up, Christina, with 3 things. What are 3 things that you've learned from your time at EY? What stands out to you?
I'm going to say, you really got me on this one. What are the things I've learned at EY? I've really learned how to manage my time. I've really learned about every single direction that sustainability can touch. And I've really learned that wherever you come from, whatever career path you have, you can always end up here. And I relate that back to my colleagues. I have a lawyer friend or a lawyer colleague. I have scientist colleagues. I have MBA colleagues, like from all over. And we all ended up here.
So cool. What do you, my last question here is, what advice do you have for someone who's thinking of moving or moving to or living and working in New York City? You're right in the heart of it all. I had such a great time when I was there, and I always ask myself, I'm like, I wonder if I could live here. What advice do you have for transplants?
Get ready for the chaos. It is, as seen in the movies, it is dirtier than you think, smellier than you think, more expensive than you think, but with all of those, let's call them bad things, comes the magic of the energy this city brings, like the passion and like the desire to improve your personal life and just to keep on pushing forward. You can find everything, and I feel like in my whole monologue you've heard it, but like diversity is such a big deal, and you can see it here everywhere, despite people being very much in the same kind of wavelength of work. It's also like so many different types of work, so many different types of culture, so many different types of foods, environments. Literally anything you want is here. Good luck with the apartment hunt. That is my worst nightmare. But other than that, it's a great city. I really encourage people in their young, like 20s to 30s to come, because after it gets a little tiring, right? I've been here for 4, almost 5 years, and there's a point where you're like, oh, maybe I should move somewhere where I can actually afford a bigger space, or where my dog can have a backyard, or where different things. But for now, it's incredible.
Sounds incredible. Sounds like it's been a great experience for you. Christina, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your stories. And I think selfishly, this is one that's going to be great for my young 20-something year old and my daughter who's getting ready to head off to college. So I know there's a lot of people that are going to get some great insights from this. So thank you so much for your time. And that's it. We'll talk to you later. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me, Derek. It's been awesome. If anyone wants to reach out whenever this gets published, I'm happy to share my LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to reply to everyone.
Great. Thank you. We'll put the links in the show notes, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, have a good one. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for checking out our show today. This show was produced by the team at thinkPARALLAX, a sustainability and communications agency with 2 decades of experience working with companies at every stage of the sustainability journey. We are experts at assessing where a company is today, defining a North Star, and developing a roadmap to get there. If your team needs sustainability guidance or training, or you have a recommendation for a guest or a topic on the show, visit us at thinkparallax.com. We'd love to hear from you.